Well, hello everybody and welcome back to another video. It's Abigail Elkwell here and I am thrilled to be bringing back this series. Even though I only did 2 videos of this last year, I actually really enjoyed doing both of them. This video that I'm recording I was originally going to do last year, but I think because obviously I didn't have a set schedule and I always had different days off every week, it kind of was like just wearing me out. So this is the set of videos that I like to call my creepy stories. So basically this is where I get into like all sorts of paranormal stuff, like creepy stuff, and seeing as it is October, it is definitely the season. So what are we going to be covering today? So today we are going to be diving in to the world's most haunted doll, Annabelle. Now I know a lot of people have seen the Conjuring movies, so like Annabelle and everything. I haven't. I'm not a massive horror person. You know, it just, things like that make me, I don't sleep well when it comes to like supernatural horror movies and stuff, so I tend not to watch them. But I am always interested if it said it's based on something true. I'm always really curious to sort of hear the backstory. And Annabelle has been something that I've obviously heard about for years. I had heard about Annabelle briefly before James Wong created the porcelain Annabelle doll, which you'll see here, for his Conjuring, for the Conjuring universe, which is based on the accounts of Ed and Lorraine Warren. Now Annabelle has currently had 3 individual movies. I can actually tell you, I think it's next year, there is going to be a 4th. It's either later this year or it will be some point next year. There is going to be a 4th Annabelle movie, so that's going to be very interesting to sort of see how they're going to sort of, you know, stretch that story, because obviously, you know, I know that up in the actual Conjuring franchise, even though I haven't seen it, I know that they've gone to the bit that they've brought her home. So whether it's going to be, and she's currently locked up in their glass case, which the actual Annabelle is. We will get into all that later, but yeah. So I'm going to actually show a picture of the real Annabelle right here. And as you can see, there is a massive difference between the film Annabelle, the film version of Annabelle, and the actual Annabelle. As you can see, the real Annabelle is a Raggedy Ann doll, whereas the one for the Conjuring franchise was a porcelain doll, and they made her look more creepy for the film. I think that the actual Annabelle, the Raggedy Ann version of Annabelle, like I say, the real one, is so much more terrifying because it looks so innocent. I've seen other, you know, I know people that have owned Raggedy Ann dolls, or they have a Raggedy Ann doll, and there's something about this particular one that's just a little bit more creepy than the other ones. So I guess we should probably start with sort of the backstory of Annabelle, and sort of how this all came to the attention of Ed and Lorraine Warren. I think I watched about 3 or 4 different videos, including an interview with the Warrens. So yeah, and I think that interview was done in like the 80s or something, and there were a few things that were different, and I can kind of understand. Ed Warren was like doing a majority of the talking. Ed Warren was a demonologist, and his wife Lorraine was a clairvoyant and a psychic medium, and a very good one at that. And I guess it's probably, there were some bits in there that were different. I have included them in here, but I guess it's probably because everybody knows the story of Annabelle. It's been retold so many times, you know, I think we can forgive them for getting, you know, certain bits, you know, messed up. So in the 1970s, a mother was looking for a birthday present for her daughter, Donna. Now, her daughter was going to be turning 28. She was also graduating at med school and was training to become a nurse. And she saw in this charity shop this Raggedy Ann doll. Now, Donna had loved Raggedy Ann when she was a child. Raggedy Ann is actually originally, before the dolls were made, it was a series of books, like children's books. So it was bought as a 20th birthday present / a graduation present for her daughter Donna. Now, in this interview that I mentioned, Ed said that it was bought as a Christmas present. So there's obviously, you know, there's a little bit of discrepancy there, but there's no doubt that it was bought for a woman called Donna who was 28 as a present. Whether it was a birthday present or a Christmas present, you know, I don't think that really matters in all fairness. It was given to her. Okay. So Donna lived with a friend. They shared an apartment with her friend Angie, who was also a nurse. And they worked at the same hospital. They did the same shift. So they did 4 till midnight. And, you know, most of the time, Annabelle, you know, she would be kept in the room, and that's where she'd stay. After a little while, Donna brought down the doll, and she said to Angie, "Oh, this morning Raggedy Ann is going to have breakfast with us." And this went on for a couple of days. On the 3rd day, they started to talk to the doll as though she was a little girl, like an actual person. Which obviously, you know, when we're children, we talk to our toys, we talk to our animals like they are actual people. But, you know, being an adult and talking to a doll like it's a person, you know, is obviously a little bit strange. So I think if this was me, that would definitely be starting to serve alarm bells of, okay, why is this happening? Why am I treating this like it's a person? And I think that would possibly, to other people, sort of give the impression, okay, something isn't right. Maybe something supernatural, or I don't know. But I mean, with me, my imagination always went, you know, even when I was a child, it always went a lot further than sort of most children's imaginations. And obviously, I know now that's probably because of my borderline personality disorder. And I can even tell you that one of my personalities is a little girl. So, you know, some people might think, okay, maybe there was some kind of personality disorder, but them both treating it like it's a child, yeah, no, there was definitely something. So, sort of, as this whole behaviour sort of started to, you know, carry on around the doll, after breakfast, Donna would normally take the doll up to her room and place it on her bed. But this is when things started to get a little strange. So, like I say, Donna would, for example, place the doll on her bed. They come back and it would be in a chair, or it would be on the bed and it would have its legs crossed. And at one point, oh no, sorry, that's a little bit later. Sorry, I have notes right in front of me like I did last time, and I'm just sort of glancing down, and I've just really noticed that I put something in the wrong place. And you know, she would also sometimes be, you know, as time got on, things really started to get more strange with Annabelle, but at this time they didn't know it was, they didn't call it Annabelle, they just called it Raggedy Ann. At this, sort of as time got on, you know, they would find that the doll was in a completely different room. So, like say, she would normally be in Donna's room, so they would, so for example, she would leave the doll on her bed, and then they come back and it would be in the kitchen, or they'd leave it in the living room and then it would be back on Donna's bed. And they started to think, okay, someone must be breaking in, someone must be playing a prank. And so soon after all this stuff started to happen, they started to find little notes in parchment paper. Now, one thing to note about this is neither Donna or Angie used parchment paper or had even bought any parchment paper. And they had a little look as well, and they couldn't find this parchment paper. But the creepy thing, not just the fact that they were finding notes in parchment paper that they didn't own, they were finding that the parchment paper had little notes on it. And the little notes would be in a little girl's handwriting, and they'd be saying things like, help me, help us, help Lou, who we'll go back onto later. So like I say, at first they thought, oh, someone's obviously, you know, finding a way to break in, and so they started to do like little things to try and sort of prove that someone was breaking in, because they thought, okay, that this you know, this is a little bit strange that, you know, we're going off to work and then we're finding all this stuff. So they start to do things like put flour by the doors, like shut doors, or even sort of like, I don't know, like lock them. And sort of, you know, this went on for a little while, and yeah, they came up with nothing. And they were thinking, okay, this is really strange. Why is all this stuff happening and we can't, you know, find a logical explanation? Again, I think for most people that will probably be a red flag, thinking, okay, maybe there's something supernatural coming in. What have we brought in recently that could be behind the supernatural? So they asked a friend of theirs called Lou, who was Angie's fiance, and they asked him to move in and sort of keep an eye on things while they weren't there. Now, the moment that Lou saw the doll, he immediately took this dislike to it. He said that the doll felt dark and it felt creepy, and he really didn't like it. And there were a few occasions that he even asked Angie to have a word with Donna to sort of either get rid of the doll. At one point, he even said, can you either get rid of it or even burn her? And, you know, the fact that, you know, it's like you sort of see this inanimate object and you're thinking something's not right about it. And in a way, this would sort of foreshadow what would happen later. Because obviously, as I said, they were finding little notes saying, help me, help us. But the main one that obviously sticks out is help Lou. Why would they be finding things like that? And, you know, even when Lou was sort of living with them, this stuff was happening. And at one point they did even ask Lou, like, going, hey, are you messing with us? Are you playing a prank? And even he was like, why would I do this? What need do I have of parchment paper? We don't use it. I don't use it. You don't use it. You know, why would I be buying it just for this stupid thing? And so, you know, they did kind of let it go for a bit. But Donna and Angie would still be bringing the doll down to breakfast. And on one of these days, they are sitting having breakfast, talking to the doll like they normally do. The doll is just sat in the chair. Then all of a sudden, they see the doll raise her hands onto the breakfast table. And they're both like, you saw that, right? What is going on? So immediately, Angie is like, okay, I think something, you know, supernatural is happening. We need answers. We need to talk to someone, but they didn't know anyone that could do this. So while they went to work, they knew a nurse that kind of knew about these things, and they had a friend that was a psychic medium. Now, before their shift, or just after they'd seen Annabelle lift her hands onto the table, they were sort of thinking, hey, there's obviously something going on. Let's have a seance. Like, you know, joking around as people do. And, you know, they got to work, spoke to this person they knew, and they said, well, I have a friend who's a psychic. They could come over and have a look at this doll, and hopefully they can give you some answers. So this friend of a friend comes over, and, you know, they have Annabelle out, and the psychic tells them that the doll is being inhabited by the spirit of a 6 or 7-year-old little girl called Annabelle Higgins. In some versions of the story, she's 6, but most of the story she is 7. So I'm just going to say 6 to 7-year-old little girl. She was a young girl named Annabelle Higgins who lived on the property long before the apartment complex that the girls live in was built. And basically she said that Annabelle had died in an automobile accident, and she had taken a liking to the doll, and she was saying, I'm really sorry if I scared you. It wasn't my intention or anything, but this place just holds a lot of happy memories for me. And so she convinced the girls through the psychic to let her stay in the doll. She was saying she meant no harm or anything, which would later turn out to be a massive lie. So after this, the girls then started to treat Annabelle like she really was a little girl. They started to take her out on trips. They started to buy her clothes. They started to buy her jewellery, which, you know, is, you know, is very unusual. You know, you don't normally buy a doll clothes or jewellery, you know, unless it's kind of like a Barbie or something, but I'm pretty sure Raggedy Ann dolls didn't like need changing or anything. So, you know, obviously that's a little bit creepy, but like I say, this would turn out to be a massive lie, because things soon started to escalate. They started to hear whispers, they started to hear knocking. So basically, this was the start of a demonic infestation. And, you know, normally things like the, you know, when you've got a demonic type haunting, normally they start off sort of with little things like the knocking, tapping, hearing whispers and other things. And from a demonic type haunting, it can usually escalate to a possession. Now, demons, they need to have permission to enter. So obviously, this entity had convinced the girls through a psychic that this was just the spirit of a little girl, and was saying, please, please, please let me stay in this doll. And they then gave it permission to stay in the doll, which effectively gave it an invitation to come in and do whatever it wanted. And sort of really, after this whole thing, you know, Annabelle started to really, really show her true colours. So basically, as we know, Angie's fiancé Lou really did not like Annabelle. And as a result of him really, really not liking her, he really became the focus of the attacks. So at one point, he was staying over the night, and he woke up in a state of sleep paralysis. Now, if you don't know what sleep paralysis is, it is a very terrifying thing. I have had it only once, and I was a child. And it was absolutely terrifying because, you know, you're awake, you're consciously awake, but your body isn't awake. And, you know, I think I was about 5 at the time. So, yeah, it was absolutely terrifying. So, imagine, you know, an adult going through this. And, you know, Lou was just like, okay, this is really weird. And then suddenly there's like this movement that catches his eye, and he's thinking, okay, like, what's that? It's Annabelle. Annabelle is starting to climb up the bed. And now, like I say, he's in sleep paralysis, he can't move. And he's just thinking, oh my god, what the heck is going on? Annabelle continues to crawl on to Lou's chest and then proceeds to choke him. Which is like, what the hell? Now, if that wasn't scary enough, sort of after the psychic had come, they'd come home from work, and the girls had seen Annabelle in sort of by the door, by their front door as they'd opened it to come in, and she was standing up. This doll was standing up. Now bear in mind, this is a rag doll. This should not be able to stand up by itself. So the fact that obviously, like I've said, it has, you know, she was crawling. it's a bit, okay, something is very seriously wrong. Now, after this whole attack, I don't think anything really happened for a little while, and then there was another more serious attack on Lou. Again, he lost consciousness. So Donna was out doing something. I don't know whether she was at work or not, or whether she was at another friend's house. She could have even been doing the shopping, but Donna was not in the house when this incident happened. So Angie and Lou were in the apartment, and they just suddenly hear this massive crash from Donna's room. And they kind of look at each other like, what the hell was that? So they go to Donna's room where the door has been closed. They open the door, and there is like a massive mess. Like, things have been knocked off the dressing tables, like there's been a chair tipped over. Everything's just a mess. Sat in the middle of the floor is Annabelle. And they're thinking, okay, this is really, really strange. So Lou then goes over to the doll, and he says, you don't have any power. You're just a stupid Raggedy Ann doll. And straight after he says that, he feels this, what he described as this force going right through him. And he described it as feeling incredibly negative and just pure evil. And I'm not sure if he drops Annabelle or what, but he just sort of loses consciousness again. And it obviously wasn't very long, but he basically feels just this pain in his chest. And he's thinking, okay, what the heck has happened? And he looks down, and there is blood coming through his shirt. He lifts up his shirt, and there are 7 claw marks on his chest. And he's just like, okay, this is getting serious. And even Angie's thinking, this is not a little girl. This can't be the spirit of a little girl. This has to be something else. So after this episode, Lou is basically like, I've had enough of this. Like, I can't take anymore. Let's get a second opinion. So he contacts a priest called Father Rich Noland, who is from the Catholic Order of Exorcism. And basically he comes over at Lou's insistence, and he's like, look, we've got this issue. Can you please have a look at this doll? And he tries to exorcise the doll, but he finds it's too strong. So he contacts the Warrens. Now, like I say, Ed and Lorraine Warren are massive in the paranormal world. They have had their fair share of controversies, but, you know, this is definitely sort of, you know, one of their most famous cases. I mean, last year I did the Devil Made Me Do It case. But yeah, so basically they were contacted, and they were like, yeah, we'll come down, and they do an investigation on the doll. And Lorraine turns to the girls and tells them, there is a demonic force inside the doll. This is not the spirit of a little girl. And they're just like, oh my gosh. You know, obviously the fact that there were scratches, there were attacks. Like I say, there were whispers, there were knocks. You know, it was kind of starting to get to the point that obviously, you know, something obviously must have been drastically wrong. The fact that, you know, the entity was allowed to stay in the doll obviously gave it permission to do whatever it wanted. So basically do an investigation, and Donna basically says to the Warrens, please just take this doll away. I don't want it anymore. So yeah, they begin to, so they take the doll back. And while they're taking the doll back to their house in Connecticut, they start to have car problems. So they start to have issues with their brakes and, you know, the engine cutting out. And sort of after a while, they're taking the back roads because they don't want to risk sort of, you know, they do not want to risk taking it, you know, on a sort of a main intersection in case, you know, something really serious happens. So Ed stops the car, and he always, in his bag that he took to him with investigations, he always had a bottle of holy water, or maybe even a few bottles of holy water. But basically what he does is he opens the bag that contains this holy water. He opens the bag in the back seat that has Annabelle, and at first he like starts sprinkling, and then in the end he just dumps the whole sort of bottle of holy water on her. Because he just, even when they got in the car, things sort of felt off. It did feel evil, and they said that they had felt it resonating from the back where Annabelle was. So after Ed has dumped like this whole bottle of holy water on Annabelle, the car starts up absolutely fine, and nothing else happens for the rest of the journey. So they come back, and they're like, okay, we need a place to keep this doll so we can study her. So they put Annabelle into Ed's office, and they put her on this chair by Ed's desk. And they're like, okay, well, we'll you know, I can come in and we'll study her a bit more later. He turns his back, and he's just about to leave the office when something catches his eye. Annabelle is levitating in the chair. So she has managed to pick up this whole chair with herself sitting in it, and is just lifting it off the ground like it's nothing. And he's then thinking, okay, this is getting serious. And, you know, they keep Annabelle in the house for, you know, sort of, I don't know if it was a few weeks or a few months. I don't know. They keep it in the house for a while. And again, just like they did at Donna's, the doll kept moving. So they'd leave it in Ed's office, and then they'd come back, like they'd go away for a night, and she would be sat in Ed's armchair in the living room. So that was really, you know, where she liked to stay. So, you know, they just sort of, you know, for a while they just let her do what she wanted. And there was one contractor who'd come in. He was working in the living room, and Annabelle was just sat in Ed's chair like she normally did. And he was like, and he got really creeped out and said, I don't like this doll, I don't like the way she's looking at me, it just feels evil. So at this point, Ed is like, okay, maybe we need to move Annabelle to somewhere else. So they move Annabelle to a building that is on their property where they keep like loads of haunted stuff, and they put Annabelle in a chair, and again she levitates the chair that she was sat in. And they do their stuff. Obviously she eventually comes down, and then they leave. And this was witnessed by quite a few people, her levitating and her moving. Excuse me. Now, sort of while they, before they put Annabelle in her case, they actually had a lot of friends that were clergy. And a lot of things would happen when some of their priest friends would come. They would challenge the doll, they would say, oh, you're just a doll, and they would get scratched. So obviously this thing did not like clergymen at all, which obviously massive indication that there was obviously something not right with this doll. And well, at one point they have one of their friends round, and we happen to know that sorry, I'm backtracking here. So Annabelle is responsible for at least one car accident that we know of, and this car accident severely injured a priest. So like I said, they have a lot of friends that are priests, and this friend comes around, he's got this brand new car, and he takes them, that they go out somewhere, and he says, oh, I hear you have this doll, I want to see this doll. So Ed says, well, okay, I'll take you down to see the doll. Annabelle is just sitting in her chair, and he goes down with Ed, and he picks up the doll and says, you are nothing, you have no power. God is stronger than you. And Ed is like, oh my gosh, don't do that. That is the last thing you want to do. And he's like, yeah, right, it's just a doll. So after a few hours, this priest is getting ready to leave, and Lorraine just turns and says to him, look, you have to call us when you get home. And at first he's laughing about it, he's joking it off, thinking, oh my gosh, seriously, it's just a doll. But sort of after a few minutes, he can tell that Lorraine is being deadly serious. And he just says, okay, I will call you when I get home. And sort of a few hours pass, and they haven't heard anything from him, and they're thinking, okay, our friend should be home by now. This is really strange. few more hours go past and they finally get a phone call from their friend. He's in the hospital. He's had a severe car accident in which he was nearly killed in. So he tells them that he was driving along, he was at a busy section of the interstate when suddenly his brakes failed. And, you know, he was trying to stop the car, and he looked up into his rearview mirror and he saw the image of Annabelle in his rearview mirror. And he says, my gosh, I think she caused my car accident. She nearly killed me, because he had nearly died. He completely wrote off his car. He totaled the car. But, you know, this really was sort of like the first sort of major thing that she'd really done outside the museum. You know, she'd never tried to kill anyone. You know, she'd hurt people, she'd scratched people in the chest, but this was the first time that she was basically responsible for an accident that nearly killed someone. But this wouldn't really be the last thing that she would be involved in. So while Lorraine was still alive, she would actually do work for the police. She would use her clairvoyance to help police investigations. And at one point, there was a homicide detective that was over and was discussing a case with Lorraine. And he basically said, oh, I've heard that you have this doll. Can I see it? And, you know, Ed was like, okay, we can go and see the doll. And they went down, and Annabelle is just sitting in the chair, like she normally does. And Ed is talking about the doll, and then all of a sudden Lorraine comes in and says, Ed, you have a phone call. And so he's like, okay, and he just turns to him and says, I'll be a few minutes, just don't touch anything. Because obviously there's a lot of haunted and cursed stuff in their museum. He wasn't gone 10 minutes. And he's coming back. And he sees this detective running up the stairs, completely out of breath, looking absolutely terrified. And he already knows what's wrong. He already knows that this detective has touched the doll. He already knows. And, you know, Ed is trying to say, oh, what's wrong? Are you okay? And he just will not talk about it. And this guy ends up leaving. Ed and Lorraine, they go down to the museum. It is a complete mess. And they see that this detective had thrown the doll. And there were also marks on the officer's chest, to which he showed to Lorraine. He wouldn't show Ed. He did not want to talk about it to Ed because obviously Ed had said, you know, don't touch it, don't touch anything. But obviously he'd gone completely against Ed's instructions and messed about. So basically after this incident, they were like, we have to do something, because this homicide detective actually ended up retiring a few months later. Ed and Lorraine just think, okay, we cannot have Annabelle just sitting here. So they decide we are going to build this special case to house her in. And this case has 2 prayers inscribed in it: the Lord's Prayer and the Prayer of St. Michael's, which obviously are 2 very powerful prayers, and there's also holy water sprinkled in it. This doll, because of how powerful it is actually exorcised at least 3 to 4 times a week because of the evil that is in this doll. So they basically pray, they pray daily, like once a day. Annabelle will have a prayer said over her box to try to contain the entity that is in the box. Now, where she had this box is obviously where she's kept daily. I'll put a photo of Annabelle in the box. Now, a few years later, after they had built this box, they were giving a tour to some college kids, and among this party was a young man and his girlfriend. And he was basically saying to the story of Annabelle when this young man came up and he challenged Annabelle and he said, "You're nothing but a stupid doll. You can't do anything." And Ed looked at him and kicked him out and said, "You and your girlfriend have to leave." And they ended up laughing, thinking, this whole thing was a bunch of hooey. They laughed at Ed, and again he said to Annabelle for her to do her worst, basically. And then they get on the motorbike. While they are driving back to where they're from, the guy loses control on his bike, and he collides headfirst into a tree. And this instantly kills him. The woman, his girlfriend, was severely injured, and she actually spent at least a year in hospital. But she basically said later that they had been talking about Annabelle, they'd been joking about when the whole accident had happened. So Annabelle has basically killed at least one person that we know of. Obviously, I don't know, she could have killed someone else for all we know. But, yeah, so Annabelle has been kept in this box, in the locked box, ever since. The only time that she was really taken out was for the Ghost Adventures special called Annabelle's Curse, which was done a few years ago. And basically the Warren's son-in-law, the Ed Warren, basically took under his wing as a protege, and he now actually runs the Warren's Occult Museum. And he's married to their daughter, but he brought Annabelle down from Connecticut for this special. And the stuff that happened on this investigation, this was one of the things that I watched, is crazy. I love Ghost Adventures. I'm a massive fan of Ghost Adventures. I completely appreciate what Zach does. And, at some point I do really, really want to go to Vegas and see the stuff that he has in this museum, because he has some really incredible stuff in there, and I really want to go. So they did this investigation, and you know, they got figures, like skeletal figures on their on their like mapping device. For some reason I've forgotten what it's called, and I watch Ghost Adventures like all the time. Oh well. But they were getting words, so one of the words they got was electricity. And they were doing this stuff with Annabelle, and Zach really, really wanted to touch her, and the son-in-law, the Warren son-in-law was saying, no, don't. This is what she wants. This is what she's trying to do. And Zach subconsciously touched Annabelle's foot, to which the now owner of Annabelle, basically came out of their like nerve center and took Annabelle away. And I mean, the amount of like preparation before like Zach and Co even saw the doll was mad. So basically he dipped his hands in holy water, put a rosary, had a Bible, and he had like these oven gloves. He would not touch Annabelle directly. And not even Lorraine would touch Annabelle at all. She hated it. The only time that I think she ever touched Annabelle was when the contractor that was doing the bookshelves, I think that was probably one of the only few times she touched Annabelle because Ed wasn't home. But yeah, he removed the doll. And I know there are a lot of stuff about whether it was the actual doll, because he demanded a massive fee, like appearance fee. And apparently he was like really rude, really obnoxious to Zach and his crew. So, but I think the things that they did capture definitely did lend into it being real, definitely. You know, whether all of it was real, I don't know. You know, I keep an open mind. But sort of a few days, the day after they had investigated it, Vegas, there was a storm, and Zach was having a lunch with his friend after touching Annabelle's foot the previous night, and there was a lightning strike. A flash storm suddenly happened, and there was a lightning strike that hit like a lamppost, and right underneath this lamppost was Zach's car, which it missed. And it's like, oh my gosh. The fact that, you know, it said electricity, obviously it makes you think, okay, this doll knew something. And it had also said on a different device, it had said grab foot. And like say Zach subconsciously did grab Annabelle's foot. You know, I don't, you know, he's definitely, I would say, released some kind of energy. I'm hoping that, you know, the energy did go back to the doll, but I don't know. There might be a little bit that is at Zach's museum, but yeah. So my theories about Annabelle is that with all the stuff that happens, I don't think it is just one entity that's in the doll. I think it's multiple. You know, whether like most of the entities are evil, you know, there's definitely at least one evil entity in there, but it is a possibility that there could be the entity of a little girl in that doll, but I think honestly it's highly unlikely. But honestly, it would not surprise me if there are multiple entities within the Annabelle doll. And on that note, I'm actually going to wrap it up today. It's probably about 9 o'clock at night. I'm probably not going to sleep tonight. But I really had to like work myself up to do this because, you know, I have been sick. You can probably hear in my voice I'm still a little bit blocked up, but I'm not like completely blocked up anymore. But anyway, thank you so much for watching. If you did like this video, please hit that like button. Hit the subscribe button, the bell to be notified when I pop up a video. And I will see you all later. So yeah, take care everybody. Sleep tight. Don't let the bed bugs bite. Bye.